For native peoples of North America, selecting a winter campsite was an art of survival where every small detail could mean the difference between life and death. When icy winds cut through the air and snow blanketed the ground, a poorly chosen site could doom an entire family overnight. Generations of experience taught them how to observe and evaluate the landscape wisely. First, they sought wooded areas or sparse forests, since tree lines acted as massive natural windbreaks, shielding teepees from freezing gusts. Beyond forests, cliffs and rocky slopes were also used, not only to block the wind but also to absorb daytime warmth and release it at night. Small valleys, when carefully chosen, offered protection from strong winds while providing access to water and nearby game trails. However, not all valleys were safe. Deep depressions often became cold traps, where nighttime temperatures dropped far lower than the surrounding land. For this reason, elevation was critical. Even pitching camp just a few meters higher could prevent exposure to lethal cold. Firewood was another non-negotiable factor. Camps had to be located near enough dry trees and fallen branches to ensure fuel supply during snowstorms, when gathering became impossible. Before erecting a teepee, snow was often packed down to create a flat base, which insulated against ground frost and prevented meltwater from flooding the floor. This careful planning shows that choosing a campsite was never just about finding shelter. It was about transforming nature's harshness into protection. For Native Americans, each correct choice of ground became a fortress against winter, giving their families the chance to survive the long, freezing nights. Once the right campsite was chosen, the next challenge was creating warmth inside the teepee. A fabric shelter, no matter how well placed, was useless without a carefully managed fire. For Native Americans, the teepee fire was not simply a campfire moved indoors. It was a precisely designed heating system. The fire pit was dug in the exact center of the teepee, about 6 inches deep, ensuring even heat distribution. This design worked hand in hand with the site's wind protection, as smoke flaps at the top and small ground-level vents created a natural draft system. Cold air was drawn in from below, while smoke rose upward and escaped, keeping the air breathable. Only dry wood was used, since wet or green would produce suffocating smoke. Fire management became a critical responsibility. Flames needed to be hot enough to warm the interior but never so strong as to endanger the shelter. Adults rotated shifts to watch the fire through the night, acting as living thermostats who balanced heat and safety. Together, the carefully chosen campsite and the teepee fire formed a dual system: nature's protection from the outside and controlled warmth from within. This union transformed a thin fabric shelter into a safe, warm home in the heart of winter. While the fire kept the air warm, the frozen earth below remained an invisible enemy. No matter how bright the flames, direct contact with the cold ground could steal away body heat until survival became impossible. To counter this, native tribes developed bedding systems that insulated families from below. Willow mats were tightly woven and laid as the base, creating air pockets that blocked frost. Layers of dried grass added further insulation, while buffalo hides and furs went on top, with the fur side up to trap warmth and the leather side down to block drafts. Some tribes innovated with compacted soil floors or heated stones. Rocks warmed by the fire during the day were wrapped in hides and placed under bedding at night, creating natural heating pads. Sleeping areas were shaped into shallow nest-like depressions, cradling bodies and preventing warm air from escaping. Most importantly, family members slept together strategically. Adults formed the outer ring, blocking cold drafts and radiating heat inward, while children and elders were placed in the center where warmth was most concentrated. This layering of natural materials and shared body heat turned bedding into more than comfort; it was survival engineering. When combined with the teepee fire, the insulation system created a protective cycle. Fire heated the air, bedding preserved that warmth, and family closeness amplified it. Against the frozen ground, these techniques became the backbone of survival. If bedding was the shield against the frozen ground, then the human body itself was the most reliable heating source. Native Americans treated body heat as a resource to be generated, preserved, and distributed. Before lying down on insulated bedding, they often performed light exercises, walking around, stretching, or simple tasks, to stimulate circulation and raise core temperature. The goal was to enter sleep already warm without producing sweat, since damp clothing could be deadly in the cold. Clothing was worn in carefully layered systems. The innermost layer was made of soft hides that absorbed moisture and added light insulation. The middle layer, often thick fur, trapped air pockets that retained heat. The outer layer of leather or hide provided wind resistance and further warmth. At night, additional buffalo hides or fur blankets were wrapped around the body. Special attention was given to hands and feet, which lost heat fastest. These extremities were wrapped in hide strips, tucked against the body, or placed within blankets. Family sleeping arrangements also amplified warmth. Adults slept on the outside, protecting children and elders within. In this way, body heat was pooled and shared like a collective furnace. Together with bedding, clothing systems ensured warmth from both below and around, making the teepee not just a shelter, but a carefully managed microclimate in the dead of winter. Even with layers of clothing, exposed skin remained vulnerable to the icy wind. For this reason, native tribes developed an ingenious method of skin protection using animal fat and fire ash. Rendered buffalo tallow, bear grease, deer fat, or bird fat was applied directly to exposed skin, creating a waterproof layer that sealed in warmth and blocked cold air. Each type of fat had specific properties. Buffalo tallow was long-lasting, bear grease extremely durable, deer fat gentle for children, and bird fat thin and easy to spread. To enhance the effect, fine ash from hardwood fires was mixed into the fat. This paste clung to the skin, adding insulation and even absorbing radiant heat from nearby flames. It worked much like a primitive but effective cold weather cream. For critical pulse points, wrists, ankles, and neck, strips of leather soaked in fat were wrapped around the body, keeping blood warm as it circulated. This method was the perfect complement to layered clothing. While clothes protected the body from the inside, fat and ash salves shielded exposed areas from external assault. The combination created a double defense system that could withstand even the harshest conditions, proving that survival often lay not in brute force but in clever adaptation to nature's challenges. The most vulnerable members of the tribe, children and elders, required special attention beyond what fat salves and multiple layers could provide. Their weaker bodies struggled to generate and retain heat, so survival depended on comprehensive support. They were always placed closest to the fire, in the center of the teepee where heat was most evenly distributed. Around them, adults formed protective rings, blocking drafts and radiating body warmth inward like living heat shields. Additional layers of hides and furs were used. While healthy adults might sleep comfortably with 2 or 3, children and elders were often wrapped in 5 or 6. Heated stones, warmed in the fire and wrapped in hides, were placed at their feet, backs, or stomachs to provide long-lasting supplemental heat. Nighttime vigilance was also crucial. Adults rotated shifts, checking for signs of hypothermia or frostbite and adjusting coverings as needed. In this way, care for the vulnerable became more than physical. It was an expression of community values. The tribe ensured that knowledge, loyalty, and love protected its most fragile members. If fat and ash guarded the skin, the warmth of family bonds shielded the heart of the community. Survival, therefore, was not just technical skill, but compassion in action. All the careful systems of warmth and protection, fire, bedding, clothing, skin care, and special attention for the weak, could collapse instantly if predators attacked. In harsh winters, wolves, bears, and mountain lions grew desperate and bold, drawn by the smell of food and the heat of human camps. Protecting the family, especially children and elders, meant building defenses as vital as fire or bedding. Dogs played the first role as living alarms. Trained from a young age, they could detect approaching threats and distinguish between them, signaling with different barks and movements whether the danger was a lone bear or a wolf pack. Their warnings gave people precious time to prepare. Inside the teepee, weapons such as bows, spears, and knives were placed within quick reach, though kept safely away from children. Outside, the very snow was shaped into defensive mounds or barriers, forcing predators to approach along predictable paths where they could be confronted more easily. When an alarm was raised, responsibilities were clear. Strong adults went out to intercept the danger, while others stayed back to guard the teepee's interior, ensuring the safety of the weak at the center. Children and elders, wrapped in hides and surrounded by warmth, were shielded not just by family members but by a wall of vigilance and courage. In this way, the teepee became more than a shelter. It was a fortress of warmth and protection. And perhaps the strongest defense of all was not weapons or dogs, but the bond of community itself, where love and responsibility created barriers no predator could easily break. Surviving the brutal winters of North America demanded more than strength. It required knowledge, discipline, and unity. Native American tribes mastered this challenge by weaving together 7 survival methods into a seamless system. From the very first step of choosing a campsite sheltered from wind and rich in resources, every decision was calculated to turn nature's harshness into protection. The teepee fire provided warmth and ventilation, while ground insulation and bedding shielded families from the frozen earth. Clothing layers and careful body heat management transformed the human body into an efficient heating unit, further reinforced by protective salves of animal fat and ash. Children and elders were given special care at the heart of the teepee, surrounded by the warmth and vigilance of their families. Finally, predator defenses ensured safety from external threats. Together, these methods created not just survival, but resilience, proof that knowledge and community could outlast even the coldest nights.